the Foscari Short Film Festival with Ben Bovington-Key, the director of Dirty Little Rascals. So I'm going to ask you quite a lot of questions about your short, okay? So the first question is, why did you choose to be inspired by a true story, the story of your friend Ross and you, instead of telling a pure fiction in your short?
I guess because we have to do our graduation films, it was something that I was thinking about for a long time, and I wanted to kind of do a heist film, but in a different, like not a bank robbery or anything. And I remembered this story from my childhood, and it was, I wanted to make it more about a friendship being solidified rather than the heist. So the idea of like two kids working together to do it and make it kind of playful and funny as well. And it was just a fond memory I had that I'd like to share. Yeah.
Then, in your short there is the theme of the sexuality. And my second question is, what do you think the theme of sexuality is thought to be outside your country?
Outside of England,
yes.
What the ideas of sexuality?
In Europe or around the world?
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, just the idea of it in the film was the idea of these two kids who don't really have a father figure to explain it to them, having to figure it out themselves between each other. I'm not sure how that reflects around the country, but obviously in England, in our film, we have these newspapers that have a picture of a lady on the third page, which I always found fascinating and weird that it's a newspaper with that in, and it's a weird way that we've made it a commodity like in the news. But I'm not
so
sure
what's the idea in England of sexuality?
What's the idea in England? Oh, I'm not sure. I guess.
Or how do you read this theme in your childhood? For
theme in
example,
childhood, I guess the idea of it being in the paper was always. I mean, that is no longer in the news anymore in England because obviously people.
I guess.
Yeah, I know it's not like acceptable, and it was like it's a very controversial thing. To kind of make like having women to sell news is not alright, and it was never something that I agreed with in the film.
Sure, of course.
But I think England's probably getting better at how we represent women in the media by taking things like this away and understanding that it's not okay. But yeah.
Then, in your short there is clearly the theme of the diversity, because Reg has a problem with his leg. And so my question is, do you think that this theme of diversity should be dealt with at schools more than it could be at
taught
the moment?
Schools, or
taught, or also thought about it, because diversity is a very controversial theme, and also a thing that now is very hard.
Yeah, of course.
Also to talk to children, of course.
Yeah, definitely. And there's the issue of being potentially ostracised in school for being different. Or I think England is generally quite good at kind of maintaining equality in the classroom in terms of that, and we do have schools that specialise in kind of disabilities and stuff. But the film is set in the 80s when this was not necessarily the case, and people may have been bullied for that, and I'm sure they still are today. I think it's definitely something that should be addressed in schools and taught that it shouldn't be treated as a difference. It's inclusive. Yeah.
Okay. And while I was watching your short, I noticed that apart from Tom's grandmother, there aren't any other female roles.
No, there's not.
And why? Why do you choose that?
The kind of idea was that the boys, their fascination with the women in the newspaper comes from, and I didn't really want there to be any other female presence because they're trying to learn about women, and the only way they've been presented it is this really false image of women in the news. And I felt like if it was just a point of, like, if they had someone like a good role model of a woman in the film, then they probably wouldn't have had to go to the lengths of trying to see the newspapers, but they don't, and he only has his grandmother who's not kind of there for him anyway, and so they have to kind of go through this false...
And the grandmother is also a figure of the past, so
Sure.
she thinks of the female role like it was
Yeah,
in the past.
of course,
So,
yeah, not a very progressive view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you really for your work and also for answering my questions.
That's okay. Thank you.